Grateful to have Dr. Rob here tonight. We've got
Th-
questions in the queue already.
I know we got a crowd. We're getting ready. By the way, Tammy, I heard you did this by yourself recently because none
It
of us
was
were there.
accidental, but yeah, no, it was. But like, yes, thank you. The group. I didn't hit record because I was like, oh, it's just me. But yeah, I had a nice
Oh,
group of people, and they had wonderful questions. And I didn't get to all of them, no surprise. But yeah, it
yeah.
was.
Tammy
It
sent us
actually
poison
ended up
letters
being quite
so she could
lovely.
do this
So
on her own, but
it,
we didn't. Yeah,
it was
you,
all.
yeah,
I understood the circumstances. It's all
you
good.
were
So
great.
yeah,
Okay,
thank you. Okay, I am 9 months sober and have been in a program for 3 years. My wife and I divorced over my porn use, but are now dating again. I have read your book, Out of the Doghouse, and you mentioned your wife could go off and be with another man after hearing about my disclosure of betrayal. I have admitted and done the work to see that my porn use was cheating. She did talk with a guy friend after she found out about my betrayal, and it became physical after she filed for divorce in 3 months when we began couples counseling and stayed together for some time. Are her actions cheating as well?
so I'll glad to answer the question, but Tam, but could you maybe make it a little bit more clear because
I can. I can.
it's a
Yes, I
little.
can.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So they divorced, and so his betrayal, they had disclosure. um uh but she did talk with a guy friend after she found out about my betrayal, and it became physical after she filed for divorce, and 3 months when we became couples counseling and stayed together for some time. Are her actions cheating or not? So it's a timing thing, you know. So they
So
were
she
already
did
separated,
this.
they were filed for divorce, and then she started a relationship with someone else, and he wants to, you
Well,
know.
what's the part about and 3 months when we began couples counseling and stayed together for some time? That was the part that confused me.
So I think it's they started couples counseling, and she was still with the guy friend for 3 months after that. So she had still was hanging on to this, but he's only 9 months sober. Like, so all
Right.
of this is happening in a very compressed time frame. And part of me is, yeah, well, go ahead. Your thoughts.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to this question.
Yes, in a
Um,
little small packet. So
and I'm not sure I'll get all of this, but I don't think anyone required um disclosure is an opportunity when two people are going to stay together to even the playing field so that you as my spouse doesn't have any secrets from me and I don't carry around thinking, well, if I got away with that, that there's an absolute foundation for us to rebuild a relationship. Sometimes spouses will say, I don't know if I want to be here or not until I hear what I have to hear. And that's understandable. So in those cases, we ask the couple to put their relationship on what we call a safe harbor, which is no matter what you hear, no matter what happens, agree not to divorce for 3 months or 6 months, or let's not put everything on the disclosure. Let's see how it works out over time. So so that being said, what I heard is, and I could be wrong, someone who went through disclosure and then after that decided they no longer wanted to be married to this
I don't
person.
think they went through formal therapeutic disclosure, because it says
Ah,
after hearing about my disclosure betrayal. So to me, what I'm
ah,
reading is she found out. It was more discovery. Let's go. She found out, had
okay.
discovery, they separated, and then she started having conversations, and then which ultimately led to physical with another man. But it
Before
was
they were
in that
divorced.
messy time. She
Okay.
filed for divorce, but it was still in that messy
Well, I have
time.
the best question of all was why does it matter?
Thank you.
That why does it matter? I mean, I had thoughts about it, and I could give you a whole bunch of them because people have revenge sex. People
Mhm.
have started affairs years before, and now they feel free to, continue. There are all kinds of reasons. As Tammy and I said, we don't know your relationship, but your relationship's over. And sad, and I'm so sorry. And
No, they're getting back together again.
no, but she said, okay, so this is where I'm confused.
Yes.
And became physical after she filed for divorce and 3 months, and it was 3 months when I began couples counseling and we stayed together for some time. So I still don't understand. um
Well, okay, let's go with they're staying together. But let's go with your answer was what I was thinking. What does it matter? Like, if you're just looking to point another finger at somebody
well,
else.
that's, yeah, I mean, if this person, if they're still together
Yes.
and she went off with someone and she did whatever she did and then she decided to come back and they went to counseling and they worked it out, she cheated on you. I mean, when someone has a commitment to be with you and they are breaking that commitment, then it's cheating. It does not necessarily speak to um, what's going to happen going forward. It doesn't necessarily speak to their um, well, let me just say this week. To me, that sounds like revenge. I mean, now I'm back to the other stuff, which is maybe this person was so angry at you and so hurt that they decided, well, screw them, I'm going to screw someone else. And that happens. There are other situations where someone says, I want to try this out before I decide what we're going to do. I want to see if I would want to be with someone else. But what you can't do is what Tammy just said, which is to say, well, now we're even. Now that I did this and they did that, well, it doesn't matter because we both cheated. The truth is that you carried on whatever it was with porn for years and years and years. And while your partner's decision was not what I would believe be the right one, and I'll tell you why, it's still, you can't just weigh these things and say, well, I did this much and they did that much, and all of that. The reason that I don't agree with someone doing this for the obvious reasons is that if she had left, she would never know whether this could have worked out or not. And I find with this men a lot that they're, well, this one or this one, I don't know. It's like, well, but why don't you complete this relationship before you move? Because if you're in both, you'll never really know, did I give that the best try that I could have? But why this person did it, I don't know. I think you certainly have a right to be angry and disappointed and hurt, but why did they do it? I mean, they're in counseling with you. This is for Tammy's word. They're in counseling with you. They want to work things out. They did whatever they did because they did it. What difference does it make if you call it A or B or C? This happened. This is what went on between you. You're trying to heal it. She did what mistake, cheating, whatever. You can be angry, upset. But the bottom line is, how are you going to go forward with your recovery? And what new commitments might she have to you? Because it's about what's going to happen for us going forward. So I don't know what it meant. Maybe she was punishing you. Maybe she was getting revenge. Maybe she wanted to feel alive because you hadn't had sex in years. Who knows? But under no circumstances can you say, well, now she did this. So, you're separate people. You each have responsibility for your own lives and your own choices. So that's what I got, Tammy, from what we figured out. What are your thoughts?
Okay. So I have some similar, and I have some others that I'm framing. So the timing, and it is a little tough to navigate this, but let's go with what was the precipitating factor. You betrayed her. There was discovery of your problematic behaviors. And it's really, I hear this a lot where addicts are going like, well, but now she's done this, and so now I'm a betrayed partner. And how much more fun is it to like go, oh, I'm a betrayed partner, rather than having to look at my problematic behaviors that started all of this. If there wasn't a window open, she probably would not, like, I did not hear that she was involved with
So,
anyone else
so Tammy, let
until.
me back up for 1 second because I think we both have it wrong. The second sentence says, my wife and I divorced over this, but now we are dating again. And so whatever she did while you were divorced is none
Was
of your
not cheating.
business. And
Yeah.
it's none of your business. I mean, what she
Yes.
decided to do, you've already created a set of circumstances she did not want to continue with. Good for you that you both figured out how to move forward and what to do, but she's not responsible to you. You're no longer married. She can do whatever she wants, and you don't get to hold it against her, because I think you were doing things while you were married and you did have a commitment. Now, I don't know if she was going, oh, I can't wait till we're not married so I can go do this. But the truth is, that's not your problem. Your problem is, how can we have clarity and have new and clear commitments going forward for the two of us? Tammy, I wonder if you could give them some direction about, I hope that they're seeing a qualified therapist. I hope that they're doing good work.
Qualified therapists, and couples work, maybe. I probably with this kind of situation, but he referenced the Out of the Doghouse. Reading the book
Right.
is one thing, doing the work group is another. Like, there is so much more you will gain and glean out of a work group than just reading a book, because guess what, we can skip over words and paragraphs and go, that doesn't apply, and then someone else in the group says something and you go, oh, hadn't thought of that, me too. So highly recommend the work group. I will put the link in the chat, but they're on our website under the work group tab.
And let me just say that what Out of the Doghouse is, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is I wrote a book on what men need to do to heal a relationship when they have cheated on a woman. And men, uniquely, addict or not, are not particularly good at this. We think flowers, moonbeams, take you out to dinner, give you a gift, take you on vacation, and you're just going to forgive us. Or it's been 5 minutes, why haven't forgiven us? So I sat down and really wrote my best-selling book, big surprise, about, and by the way, well, I have a 4.4 out of 5 on Amazon for that book, because I think a lot of people read it and they think, oh, this is how we work our way through the pain. And so what's Tammy is talking about is that book was turned in, like others we have, into a work group where people can sit and learn and be educated and communicate and gather information and have homework and all that's actually live and ongoing. And yeah, I do think that if you are struggling to figure out how to come to peace with having harmed someone, that is a great place to be. I will say that Out of the Doghouse is about healing a relationship, a man healing a relationship when he's cheated on a woman. Well, if you're still cheating, or if you haven't healed your problem, maybe that's not the first book you should read. And I've had men read it and say, oh, good, now I know how to get my wife to forgive me, even though I'm still doing the same thing or haven't done my work. Um, that's probably why it's so popular. Men are looking for a way to get forgiven. But what I would say to any of you is, I wrote a book called Sex Addiction 101. There's a course called Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101. If you are going to look at how you want to be forgiven, be honest, work through your problems in relationships, you better have taken the steps to start to do it on your own and then come forward and say, I want to figure out how we work it out together. And Tammy is nodding because we've had a lot of people just sign up for the How Do I Get My Spouse to Forgive Me course when they haven't even started their own work. So
And
anyway,
that's why
that's
they're in order. Sex Addiction 1 is ahead of the Out of the Doghouse. And then we have Betray Partner. And then guess what? We have healthy intimacy. We have attachment wounds. We have why men struggle to love. We have inner child. And they're in order. There's a reason. Start here and then work your way through those. They're great. They're really helpful. They're not enough. None of these work groups are enough on their own, but we have lots of resources that can help. So, okay, next question. Added here, do you have any resources such as work sheet or form for a relapse autopsy? I found a few online, but curious if SI has anything that you use. I have a recent alcohol relapse and finding a relapse autopsy very helpful to understand and nuances for my relapse. I'll tell you what, you go to the work groups, that's the kind of, that's exactly those pragmatic things, those very useful tools are exactly what, the kind of things that you get in the work groups. The Sex Addiction 101 actually started on December 10th. I've still added a few guys to that, but also we'll have one in January. So check that out. I would highly encourage you to join those because you'll get those kind of tools.
I wanted to say that and this is going to be about us again just for the moment, is I think it is absolutely unique to someone who is both a sex addict and a drug or alcohol addict to try to work with both of those. And, one obvious answer would be if you're still struggling with alcohol, you're not going to be able, if you haven't really dealt with the sexual issues, it's going to be very hard to maintain your alcohol sobriety because you may be sober, but then the person you're having sex with or how you feel about what you're doing or the porn or whatever may drive you back to the alcohol. And as Tammy says, this is whack-a-mole. You put one out and you got the other one that pops up. So um, I agree that part of the course is teaching in the workbooks. Here's a relapse recovery. Here's how to do it. So we do offer that, but I'll say a few things about it. Number one, let me be clear what a relapse is versus a slip. This came up today in the alumni group, I think. A slip is a return to previous behavior. I went and looked at the porn or whatever that is. A slip means that happened. And then I immediately realized, wow, I've got a problem. I'm struggling with this. I went and I talked to my sponsor. I went and talked to my therapist. And I went and talked to my spouse. In other words, it happened. I cleaned it up. I take responsibility for it and I move forward. A relapse is I returned to my behavior and I didn't tell anyone. I just thought, oh, I got away with this again. I'm going to keep going away with it, getting away with it, and I keep doing it. And that's relapse, when you never stop to clean it up and move forward because you're going to end up keeping doing it because you have secrets once again. As far as I think what this person is talking about is how do you look at how it happened? Like we don't just okay, I'll drink today, or okay, I'm gonna. There is something going on in our head, even if we don't notice it. That's a little hint and a little hint. For example, there's triggers, which means maybe I used to look at porn on the computer at night after work. So tonight I'm staying after work and everyone's gone. That would be a trigger because that's when I used to act out. That might be how one of the things. But the point is to go back and see if you can begin to see where it began. rather than I just ended up here, then you can begin to address the problem before you're already in it. So what this person is talking about is how do I don't like the word autopsy, but nonetheless, how do I go back and see where this really started? And I'll tell you how I do it in a sort of paper form is I do it like a film strip. And back in the old days when didn't have digital films, we had, each shot was one before the other, and each had moved a little bit more. And when you move them continuously, you had a film. So I would look at, I drank. Okay. And what was I thinking about when I was drinking? This will be okay, this isn't. So there's two pieces to it, what you did and what you were thinking. So the next frame back might be I was walking into the bar and what I was thinking about was, and then the step before that might be I was driving home, but then I decided to go to the bar. And so I turned this way. In other words, you're going back each step, maybe to the morning when you hadn't even whatever, and you're looking at what was I thinking that led me to make these decisions. And then you're looking at, well, how did that thinking turn into an action? So I'm thinking I'm going to be off tonight. Maybe I can go do this. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell my spouse I'm going to be at work tonight, but I'm really off. So matching each action going backward with each thought that allowed you, gave you permission to do it, I think is a good way to go all the way back and see where did this start. So I don't know if I think they do it in a more sophisticated form in the course, but that's how I look at it. It's just going back piece by piece by piece, and you can't go forward. You really have to go back to see where it came from. Yeah,
And it could have been, 2 weeks ago when my spouse and I got into a fight, or 2 days ago when, somebody at work said something, or my boss said something. I mean, whatever. But yes, I agree with you, Dr. It does not happen in the moment that the action happens.
right,
It is not when you drink. It is not when you act out. It is back there where you gave yourself permission along the way. And rather than, we talk about the three-circle plan, which the inner circle is the acting out behaviors. The middle circle is the slippery slope. Like I had that trigger, I had that
right,
data point, and instead of doing something in my outer circle, the healthy things, I ignored I ignored the warning signs and chose to not call my sponsor, not go to a meeting, not do whatever it was that would be
right.
helpful for me. And I slid right on down into the inner circle. So yes, it is absolutely trackable and data to hone in on what do I need to do to adjust my three-circle plan, so that I need to go to more meetings, I need to be in contact with my peer support, I need to talk to my therapist twice a week
Hmm.
instead of once a week, whatever it is. So that data is really important to look at.
Good question.
Yeah, when it wasn't in the moment when the drink happened. It was somewhere I gave
Right,
myself permission to skip that 12-step meeting, to not, I
right.
canceled on my therapist, whatever it was, that was
Well, I
the
want to add
start of
to
it.
that because I think
Uh-huh.
about it, and I think about addiction as a mental health issue.
Yes.
It is a brain problem. It repeats. You can have relapse under stress, like depression, like anxiety. But the difference between, I think, a stress-driven slip, and stress, as Tammy said, it could be a fight with my boss. It could be we're having money problems. It could be the holidays are coming, whatever it is. We all have stress. And for some people who are more vulnerable, that might turn into anxiety or depression. But the difference for an addict is we have entitlement. It's not just that I'm stressed or I'm struggling, or it's that because of that, I deserve to go do this. And that's what I'd be looking for is where in this process did you make a decision that this is going so bad, or this is so frustrating, or I've been
Or
working
so
so hard,
good. I,
or right,
my
absolutely.
boss said you did great.
Right. My
Another
sponsor
reason.
used to say I was always the last person to leave the party, didn't want to miss a second,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like that. It's like, anyway. So entitlement is always something to look for because, and Tammy's right, it's my birthday. I get to go do this, or nobody's home for the weekend and I'm lonely. I get to do that. So we have the same stressors, we have the same emotional health responses, but addicts decide that they deserve something that other people think, well, I'm just going to rest, or I'll call my doctor, or whatever it is. They don't feel entitled. They just struggle with whatever they're struggling with. We turn it into an action. So,
Thank you, Dr. Rob. Okay, can you talk about integrity issues, objectification, and fantasy, comorbid with borderline
mm,
personality disorder? There's a challenging combination, right?
well, I'm not going to talk about borderline personality disorder
Okay.
for several reasons. I'll talk about the first part of the question.
Okay.
Um, Number one, my experience is that personality disorders, whatever you want to call them, are way overdiagnosed.
I think so too.
I think a lot of what we call personality disorders come from trauma, and it's people acting out their fears, acting out their abuse, acting out. Um, so I can't, and I don't know you, and I don't want to validate whatever you're talking about that someone might or might not have these issues. And by the way, someone who looks borderline or crazy, like a spouse that comes in, I think one of the things I think, well, what were they like a year ago? I mean, they may look crazy now, but then they hadn't been cheated on, then they hadn't been lied to. Then, so part of it is also the situation that they're in. But I will speak to objectification and integrity and fantasy. Um, Slightly different. I'm just going to approach this as if someone had said, if I am objectifying or moving into fantasy about someone else, does that mean I'm slipping or I'm doing it wrong? And my answer is, we look at people. You know, we find people attractive. I've had spouses say, if you're looking at that person as they're walking by, you're acting out again. Well, if I lost my sobriety every time that I looked at someone attractive, I would never have any time. Now, there's a difference between looking and staring. There's a difference between noticing someone on the grocery aisle and going back around the aisle to see them from the other side. I don't think it shows a lack of integrity to notice that I am doing this. However, consistently doing it and not taking responsibility for objectifying and staring, or noticing that when I do that, it leads to more problem behavior, that is not taking responsibility for it. For those of us who are starers, what do you call people who, we have something called the 3-second rule. And this is often also something we teach in Sex Addiction 101. And that is simply, I find someone attractive, and the first second I say, oh, that person's very beautiful, how nice for them. And then I turn away. And the second thing is I turn away. And then the third thing is I think of them as I might pray for them, or I might think well of them, or I might think of them as someone's daughter, or it's not a waltz where you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It is acknowledging your humanity, which is, oh yeah, I'm attracted to people. It is saying I am making a decision to not focus on that, number 2. And number 3 is I'm going to humanize that person. They're not a butt. They're a person. And my experience is and I'll just say this, it's very difficult to not do things. Addicts, I'm not going to stare. I'm not going to look. I'm not, boy, is that, I'm not going to eat that cookie. But if I say what I am going to do, it's much easier for us to make decisions and make the right decision. So have a plan so that you can, now, if you just say, screw that, I'm just going to look all I want, that's out of integrity. So anyway, that's what I get out of that. I don't want to toss around psychological diagnoses. I think that's not out of my scope here. But Tammy, is
Would
there
you talk
something?
about fantasy too? Because there's lots of people that get caught up in fantasy, whether it's, I mean, because there's
Well, what were you thinking,
objectification, but
Tammy? Why
well,
don't you?
because I think one of the more difficult things to overcome is fantasy, because it's like my mind is going off in I think the 3-second rule, if I find myself leaving reality, the 3-second rule can apply. The challenge is if I am, if somebody's lost in fantasy, they can they can do it without people really knowing that they are doing it. Somebody could
So,
be sick. Go ahead.
part of, and I want to understand what you're saying more. Another thing that I hear from spouses, and I understand, you're very angry, you're very hurt, you don't want this to happen again. You want to make sure that you know what this person is doing. You don't want to find out things you didn't see coming again. But people have fantasies, and they think about things. And they might think about other people. They might think about sex with other people. Those things cross our mind. However, however, what did I want to say? However, I know what I want to say. However, and Tammy, you're going to talk about that too, I hope. Um, what is difficult for relationships, if a spouse says, you can't have any more fantasies about that situation, and I want you to tell me if you have a fantasy. Well, a relationship is never going to heal if every time I think about someone or something else. That is for my trusted program. That is for me to call my therapist and say, I've found myself in a real fantasy about this. And then they say, well, why don't you sit and talk about it or come to another meeting? Or I have to acknowledge it to myself and take responsibility for it. It's not my job to report it to a spouse. However, I'll say one more thing. If I'm having dinner with you, Tammy, and you're talking to me and I'm looking past you to the waitress's butt for a few minutes, that's not okay. It's one thing to notice. It's another thing to treat you like you don't exist because I want to look at that. There's a big difference between noticing someone's attractive and objectification, because it's like porn on wheels. Anyway, did you watch something about fantasy? It's
Well,
such a
and I appreciate, and you're right. It is easier to have a plan to do something, to look away, to have a 3-second rule, to have, because, it's like if you say, don't think about, the white elephant, you're going to think about the white elephant. That's all you're going to think about, so we absolutely have to have a plan, but with fantasy, it is, like it is challenging the recall, especially, I mean, porn addicts can extra struggle with this, because they have all of these images
visual.
and it's in the library in their brain, that, to do recall. So, we often say in 12 step that, reality is for those of us that, that can't deal with compulsive behaviors. It's a little different than that, but we have to learn to live with reality. We have so dissociated, escaped, and numbed out for so long, and to learn to pay attention and learn to live in reality is the work of recovery. So can we do that? Absolutely, but it takes intention, and accountability. Any addict who, in my opinion, who does not have any accountability, I love that you're here, but if this is all you're doing, or you're listening to podcasts, guess what? There's nobody holding you accountable. There's no, I had a guy in one of my 12-step meetings, that said, and I'll only say this because it's anonymous, but he said, when I first got in the program, I was my own sponsor. Worst sponsor you can ever have is yourself. And I love that, because he was owning that, well, our best thinking got us into into recovery programs. Why would we think that we could possibly, figure out how to do life on a different level without outside help? So lean into your recovery people, regardless of, and I agree with Dr. Rob. Lots of people go to Dr. Google or, unqualified people and get diagnosed, and so traits or whatever, sure,
Right.
but getting, if you really want to know if you have borderline personality disorder, go to a qualified
Right.
professional who also understands addiction, because otherwise it's in a vacuum. So you want qualified professionals that understand both, and see, and then is there something you need to do differently? Maybe, but the
And
recovery tools work, if you, it's behavioral therapy. If you work on changing your behaviors, you can change.
well, I'm so glad you said that, Tammy, because it absolutely goes to the question about an autopsy of a relapse. So I find myself in fantasy. I'm in a lot of fantasy. I can't stop thinking about, well, that is maybe what got you started, or you didn't pay attention. You thought, oh, I won't think about that or whatever. And now you need to go back and say, when I start doing that, it's not enough to notice it. And by the way, it's not enough to do the relapse inventory. It's what's important is to say, I thought about that. I went and did that. What could I have done differently?
Yes.
So that when you start to fantasize and you just let yourself do it, you can think, well, next time that happens, I'm going to put a little exit sign here. When I find myself fantasizing, I will call someone. When I find myself, so you like that, Tammy? What were you going to say about that
Well, I
plan?
I think you always, yeah. What is it? A failure to plan is a plan to fail. And yeah, I always have to have, backup plans A, B, and C. If I call the first person and they're not there, I'm going to text. Like, I have got to, like, my recovery is so precious to me, that I have got to have plans. And it's not that I think I'm going to go act out, but I just don't like being dysregulated. It doesn't work for me anymore. And so I work really hard on, staying on the beam and getting the help and support that I need, so that I don't have to, feel dysregulated and uncomfortable and anxious and all of those other things. Because then, you know what, I'm more vulnerable to everything else. And it's not worth it. Recovery's too good.
Now, on another piece,
Mhm.
which is, I think that far too many addicts understand they need to go to meetings, they need to establish relationships, that they need to do that. But if you're not meaningfully doing that before you struggle, why would you ever do that when you are? In other words, if I don't have a person that I call regularly a sponsor, then when I'm in trouble, I'm not going to call anybody. Or if I only talk to them once a month, I'm thinking, oh, they must be busy. So
Yes.
there is work that has to happen before, laying the foundation for when I do get in trouble, I have people and situations. So don't think you've got this unless you have a meaningful, ongoing relationship with other people with your issue, and that you're in a structured kind of support. because I'm going to do the 3-second rule is great. But who are you going to call after to say, wow, I was struggling with fantasy. Let me tell you what was going on. Because without that connection to other people, you're alone in your head. And I bet Tammy has some statement, because you're so good at little phrases about being alone in your head. But
Oh, this is the scariest space, like no, like
you
it is
would
the scariest space. But you also said like having the plan for when it happens again. And I think that that's really important, because going, oh, I'll never do that again. I still won't say I'll never act out again. I
right.
just say I'm going to do what I need to do in this moment to take care of myself, so that's really less of an that the odds are really, really low. But so owning that this could happen again, and I'm going to have a plan so that I'm prepared for when this feeling, and it's usually that when this feeling happens, what am I going to do that's a positive thing that's in my outer circle, so that I can choose. I get to choose. We don't have to be slaves to our compulsive behaviors. We can choose our actions and reactions to those uncomfortable feelings. I don't know anybody who's died of uncomfortable feelings, so we can live with them.
uh I'll go with that. I do have one more thing, which is we run
Mm-hmm.
a treatment program,
Mm-hmm.
and I have opened sex addiction treatment programs all over the country. I've advised people in other countries. This is what I do: is I create programming, among other things. And I created a program with Tammy and all this amazing staff, but I think is one of the best. Well, it's certainly one of the best that I've ever done, because the people I've hired and that I work with are so skilled. And I'm not going to go on and on, because there's a reason I'm saying this, but there's not a single therapist that works for us who isn't licensed. There's not a single therapist who isn't a CSAT. And there isn't a single therapist who's had, and every therapist has had intensive supervision by yours personally, by Aaron, to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But all of that being said, the reason I brought up treatment is that sometimes when people are getting to graduate the program and leave, these are the two people. This is the person I don't worry about. They're getting ready to leave treatment, and they say, oh, I'm scared. This is going to be hard. I don't, how am I going to leave all the support and continue to do well? I'm worried about myself once I get out there. I think that person's in a good place. But the person who says, oh, loved your treatment program. I got everything I need. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to take it home and I'm going to do great. That's the person I worry about, because this is a lifelong struggle. And you need to know that you're going to struggle, and you need to anticipate that you're going to struggle. There is never a time when Tammy and I don't think we'll ever say about our addiction, I got this, because that's we are in trouble, because that's when you start backing off the support. That's when and a good way to say you're going to slip is, four most dangerous words for an addict, right, Tammy? Four most dangerous words. I can handle it. That's when you know you're in trouble. Okay, enough.
Okay, next question. This summer, I had a formal therapeutic disclosure. Shortly thereafter, I discovered more of my husband's activities, which was devastating. We both have been in individual therapy with CSATs. After asylum, my husband showed empathy, but in the past few weeks, his patience with me has been wearing thin. I still have triggers. He often says, we aren't getting younger. It's time to move on. What is a reasonable time to recover from this? How do I know if I'm stuck in victim mode as he believes? Boy, I have so many
Tammy,
thoughts on this.
I
Ooh,
know. Well, first of all, we're talking about all the stuff we do. We have a women's intensive retreat,
I'm pulling the link right now. Empowered
which is
Women's
called,
Retreat.
because I never get
Yes,
the name right.
Empowered Women's Retreat.
Right, Empowered Women's Retreat. The reason I bring this up is because it concerns me that you're even questioning yourself. I mean, this person's being abusive. They're creating problems with you, and they're impatient. Is what I read. They're impatient with you, even though you still have triggers for years of probably being lied to, and why wouldn't you? And then when you are concerned, he insults you by saying, well, why are we so worried about this? And we need to move on. They need to take out of the doghouse. I don't care. This is not someone who got what they needed to get out of treatment. We can teach people to change behavior. We can teach people to um, learn how to maintain that change. We can teach people how to act respectfully and compassionately towards someone we have hurt, they have hurt. The one thing I cannot teach is motivation. There are people who come to the treatment program, and they have one goal alone, and that is that they want their partner to forgive them, or they want to get this piece of paper for work. If you don't get in treatment, which is something I think is essential for the work we do, that you are going to have to live with this problem, that it isn't about making someone else happy, or you have to have your own sense of peace and integrity. So on some level, it doesn't really, for the addict, when you're insulting, when you are telling the person to move on, when you're saying, what's the big deal, when you're being unempathic, you're not doing your work. I mean, I have empathy for the spouse, and maybe Tammy, you could speak to the spouse's issues, but that's an addict who's already, and by the way, I'll say one more thing. My mouth is running fast in my brain, or whatever that is. I wonder if this person has gone back out to do it again. Because when we start pushing away the people that we're trying to support, when we start devaluing and dismissing and saying, what's the big deal, after we've been to a treatment center, I think that there's either this person really didn't care and they just went to shut you up, or for all the wrong reasons, or, and this seems more likely, and I don't know you, so I don't know what's going on, that maybe there's a reason why they're pushing you away again. And Tammy, how would you suggest that the spouse finds peace with this, or comes to deal with it? Because this just sounds awful. What are your thoughts for the spouse?
So the Empowered Women's Retreat, and it's all about you. We don't talk about it. But here's the deal. Why is your husband not going, I can understand how my problematic behaviors have been so hurtful for you. I can understand how painful this is, and that this would be triggering for you. What can I do to support you? How can my actions show you that I'm doing things differently? Because guess what? When you're saying, we're not getting any younger, we should move on, that is dismissive, that is gaslighting, that is not helpful. And here's what else I'm reading, and I'm reading between the lines, but I'm hearing that you had formal therapeutic disclosure this summer. So let's say it was June. That was 6 months ago. So guess what? Your addict husband knew all the time he was acting out. He knew. You've had, a period of time, but you had formal therapeutic disclosure 6 months ago. So, and you're just supposed to magically go, yep, we're not,
Right.
we should move on. We should move on. I should be all better from this now. No. Now I will say, so, because I don't want you to get stuck. I absolutely don't want you to get stuck. So if you're finding yourself looping with this and ruminating with this, then I would encourage you, work on your healthy boundaries for you. That's not that's not punishment for him or control about him. That is, I need to take care of me because he is showing me that he is not safe. I too wonder, if he's relapsed, if he's gone back to some of the behaviors. I will share one more thing. We have a virtual step down program, and we have had guys who have completed the program that have joined the virtual step down program. That could be something that he could do and re-engage in a more meaningful way. We are finding that is really helpful, and that was not available until this summer. So if he was there with us before that, then that would be a newer option. So he can reach out. He can talk to Jason about that. But or reach out to any of the staff. We'll be happy to help. But I'm going to invite you. This is a grief process. How an age thing is being said. So I'm thinking you guys have probably been together for a longer period of time, and the grief of the husband you thought you had, the relationship you thought you had, grief is a process. And we've got resources about how to process through it. If you are hyper focused on what he's doing or not doing, that would feel stuck. If you are going, I'm working on my healing, I'm working on regulating myself, that would not be stuck. That would be just working through the process. So there's more resources. Email me, tami@seekingintegrity.com, if I can be helpful.
I wanted to add something to that. Two things. One is, yes, one of the most difficult things in addiction treatment is when someone goes home. They get all the support, and then they go home and they're all alone. So one of the things we did was we said, why don't you stay with us 3 or 4 hours a day for 6 weeks or whatever it is after you leave? And then we thought, well, there's people who are really struggling who've been through our program, and we should open up to them. So, but that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to explain what that was. I don't hear, and I want to change these words. He often says, we're not getting younger, it's time to move on. Let me definitely tell you what he's saying. Shut up. He's saying to you, shut up. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Look at all I did, and you just need to get over it. So I want you to think about, what would it be like if those words were stated to you, if this actually was said rather than the subtext. One of the last things I thought about was, what motivated him to go to treatment in the first place? Because I'll bet it was some kind of crisis between the two of you. What did you say? in the past if this continued? Because now you're back in a situation where this person's gone to treatment, they've made promises, whatever, and they're back to treating you awfully and wanting to run their own show and all of that and be disrespectful. Did, and this was the first thought I had, maybe you need to kick their butt out. Maybe they need to learn that it isn't okay to dismiss your feelings, to tell you they've had enough of hearing from you. That is abusive. That is really abusive to have hurt you deeply and then say, why aren't you over it yet? So I would wonder what your boundary is to say, if this keeps happening, this is what I'm going to do for me. I'm going to change the locks. Yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but we teach so much about empathy and compassion. It deeply disturbs me that someone can move from all of that they practiced at the beginning to, oh, I'm tired of doing that work. I'm tired of that. I'll just go back to the way I was. Because if they went back to the way they were in treating you, they're probably going back to where they were with a whole bunch of other things. And
Yeah.
boy, if nothing else, you can need a big apology.
Yeah, well, and recovery is, you're not stagnant. You're either moving forward or you're sliding backwards. There is no, well, I'm just coasting along in recovery. So, and somebody so early in the process after decades, if he is not leaning into the 12-step work or drop-in groups, the actual work of recovery, then yep, backsliding is, is what I
Right.
hear.
Well,
Yeah.
what else are you seeing? Is this person going to lots of meetings? Are they
Yeah.
talking to what are they doing actively to show you and demonstrate that they're working on this? Okay, we have a great next question.
And this is from a female partner she clarified later. So, hi, Dr. Robin Tammy. Can you discuss the idea of backup? My husband is a PASA, and I found out in the past few months he has been plotting to set up various women as backups over the past 20 years of our marriage, and in some cases, actively forming relationships with these women. I found out tonight that he was considering my sister as a backup and kicked him out of our house. We've been married 26 years.
I'm just so sad to hear that because you're not a person. He's not saying I value you and you're so important to me and what we've had together. He's saying you're an object to me and you fill a spot for me. And if you're not filling that spot, well, or even if you are, I'm going to find some extra ways to fill up my emptiness. I'm so glad that you kicked him out. I don't, and I understand. I can't even. I'm sorry. I can't imagine what it's like to find out that this happened with your sister. I hope that she was not aware of it or involved in it. That would be a whole other nightmare. But what I hear is this person does not. How do I say it? They don't have any idea of. There's. I don't even know how to. This is so upsetting to me, Tammy. I want you to start before I start saying not nice words and all that. What a nightmare. What a
Well, and this
nightmare.
is predatory. I actually know a little bit more about this. So, but here's the deal. It's like he's not considering you. He's not considering any of these other women. They are all
Right.
just for his own objectification. They are all for his wants.
Right.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of them. He only cares about himself. And so yes, it would be, and finding someone who's in a vulnerable situation and doing any kind of emotional or whatever entanglements, is predatory, and yeah. So this is not someone who has any zero, sobriety. This person is, is, I'm really glad you kicked him out too. And
Yeah.
I, I happen to know who this person is. I value you so much. Please know how much I respect you, and I want you to value you, because he is not capable at this point of doing that. We have a residential treatment program, but like with what this person has been doing in this past, that this is highly problematic, and this is not something that seeing even a fantastic CSAT once a week is going to be enough to, to make a dent in.
Well, and I did want to add to this, and I'm going to give a little addict empathy. How awful it must be for him to be so empty inside. How desperate is this person that one person isn't enough and one person is too many and 1,000 isn't enough, or whatever that is. This is someone who is really troubled and not only doesn't see the effect on other people, that's what we're talking about in terms of the spouse, but this is desperate behavior. This is someone, and by the way, when I think sister, I think incest and what happened in their family, and how could this even, when you're gathering people, I just think this person really needs, and I know you don't feel this way, it's not your problem, but they need help. And this is someone who's deeply troubled, deeply empty. Lord knows what else they're pulling into their life. They're trying to support, they're trying to prop up themselves. And they're putting as many people and probably things in there as they can in order to have a sense of being whole. But this is a sieve. No matter how, he can have 100 or 50 or one, it's still all going to drain out because he's empty inside. And you cannot fix that because the banquet is right there. You are it, and the family is it, but not enough for him. And I sure hope that he finds a way to get help, whether or not he ever comes to appreciate what he's had. Um, yeah.
Trade here, 6 months from discovery. My partner and I had our second joint session with his male CSAT and my female abset. I'm concerned he's begun to intrigue her, and that will make my support systems unsafe. He has a history of intriguing women he works with and others by looking them up online and having pseudo emotional connections very quickly. He was unhappy that his ex-wife took on their female couples therapist as her own therapist. Any close relationship he has had with a female during our relationship has involved lies and people pleasing, especially with women of authority. We've tried to prevent him from seeing my abset's photo or video during sessions, but during our last session, he accidentally saw her. He said it was jarring, and then he proceeded to say that his CSAT is okay, but she is great and she could really do live lectures for large groups of people. During the session, she did a one-on-one grounding technique with him to create safety because he yelled at me. What do I do? Wow.
Well, let me just say quickly that I don't believe anything an addict says. So I can say, oh, my therapist had a moment with me, or we kind of looked at each other, or I think that you really don't know what's going on because addicts lie about everything to try to manipulate or change, or maybe wants to see another therapist. I don't know. But and this is me, Tammy, you may not agree. But I think if my husband had a history of intriguing with women that he worked closely with and was looking them up and chatting them up, and I didn't feel comfortable with any of this, I would probably say, you know what, I need you to see a man. I'm not comfortable with you seeing a female therapist, and I want us to heal, and I'm never going to get this out of my head.
He
And
is seeing a male CSAT. It was the
oh, it was her
combined
part.
session with her female abset. So there is a male, but then he's going like, then he's minimizing his male CSAT. Well, he's only pretty good, but she's
Uh,
fantastic.
um, Tammy, I have a bunch of thoughts, but why don't you go first?
So I would warn your absets, female person. And you know what? This is a guy that needs a residential treatment program. This is complicated stuff, and I do not like it if that is the only thing he is doing is seeing a male CSAT once a week. Like
Mm,
I like this is a lot, and like this again. I used predatory a little bit ago.
hmm
This feels invasive. These women don't want to be, I mean, that's creepy. These women do not need or want to be creeped on. And, yes, he can do it from a manipulation standpoint. I like, so let me back up a whole big step. What are you doing to take care of yourself, regardless of what he's doing and not doing? And that's financial. Make sure that you've got a good financial, situation for yourself. That you have emotional support. I would tell your abset your concerns. I would lay them out and say, "This is what I'm concerned about because this is his past behavior." Your abset may not want to, to be in a joint session again, with him. She may choose not to do that at all. You know, so making sure you've got your healthy boundaries set up for you regardless of what he does or doesn't do. The Empowered Women's Retreat, highly recommend that for you as well. We have a boundaries work group that will be starting
mm.
in January, late January. I promise I'm going to work on getting that posted this week. I need details, but anyway, but that could be useful for you too. But I feel I am feeling a whole bunch of unsafe with how this is set up. So you taking care of you've got no control over him, but you can sure work on taking care of you for your financial safety, physical safety, emotional safety, spiritual safety.
And Tammy, I'm glad you said take care of yourself and focus on you, because there's a line for me that really sticks out here, which is we have tried to prevent him from seeing my therapist or their photo or video during sessions, but he accidentally saw her. Look, I see people all day long that I'm attracted to. You can't take them away from me. You can't say, well, don't be in the world and don't, whatever this is with her. I suspect there's some pathology underneath that Tammy's talking about. But nonetheless, if he wants to look at those pictures, he's going to look at them. And if he wants to do that, but that's on him. And so you're sitting with this person and trying to help them with their recovery while you're feeling frightened and worried. And I understand the reason that would come up for you, that you want to make sure things are going to go well. But if he looks, then you decide, well, if he's doing that, what do I do for myself? If he's not taking responsibility, how do I care of me? This is the essence of a boundary. You cannot sit with him and control. You're not his parole officer. You're not his police officer. You're not his high school teacher. You are his wife or his partner. And therefore, your expectation can be that he will take responsibility for this. If you feel that you have to, or he's not going to, or he's not taking it seriously, then as Tammy said, what are you going to do for yourself? Because you're living in an unsafe situation. We cannot control what other people do. Sorry, but we can take responsibility for protecting ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can't bubble wrap him enough. And I don't hear him really being willing to do the work. Like, you guys are, I hear everybody's trying to set this all up so that he's safe. I don't hear him making sure that he is safe. Like, he is not taking the actions. He's not taking responsibility, for showing up and going like, yeah, no, I'm focusing on my male therapist. I'm choosing not to do these things. Again, we have a really good expert residential treatment program for him, and healthy boundaries for you. Okay, female betrayed spouse here found out a couple months back that my husband had a long-term affair. Affair started shortly after our marriage, lasted for about 8 years till I found out he wanted to ghost her. Did not have the courage to break off with her until the therapist told him to, since he said he wanted to keep the marriage. He also engaged prostitutes and escorts. These while started before our marriage. He has started therapy in 12 steps since claims to be sober for a few minutes now. It claims, like, yeah, exactly. We're laughing.
That was funny.
Yeah. No, it's like, okay, he identifies himself to be more of a love addict, because that's so much nicer than a sex addict. I would like to understand more. Did he love her? Earlier, right after discovery, he said he loves me more than her. I am bothered by the affair much more than the other acting out behaviors, as it seems to involve the emotional part. Also gave her lots of money, monthly sums and gifts, none of which I had. Now, how do I get over the unfairness and comparisons? How do they keep the relationship for so long?
I think we could stop
If there was
there.
no love, yeah, that's it.
So I've worked with people in these situations for a long, long, long time. And I will have men who are being manipulative and awful and having affairs and all that. And they'll come into my office and they'll say, what's going on? Well, I'm not sure if I love her or love her. I don't know who I should be with. It might be this person. And then they run to you and say, I love you. I really do. And then they run to the other person. They say, but there's two keys to this. Number one is, well, what I said before, which is, how could you ever decide how could you ever come to peace with your relationship if you're already having another one? But that's not really what is important to me. What's important to me here is that one affair is not enough. He can say he loves her, but he's cheating on her too. So I love in the situation when you and her get together and you say, you know what, he has ruined both our lives because he is doing the same thing to her that he did to you. And now and I bet you he's out there looking for number 3 or 4 or 5. So, um, I, so I hear the love part. I understand to some degree that is the worst. You can have sex with people if you tell them that you love them. I just don't think I can get through that part. It is the emotional part that is the most devastating. But in this case, I think you really have to look at what's going on. This person has sex. Are they having sex with you? Because they're having sex with someone else. Are they protected? They're going to sex workers. Have you had an STD test? I'm really at the very basics of things. So I think what you're worried about, which is, does he love me or not? How do I know? How do I deal with the lack of love? How do I deal with the love addict piece? I don't think any of that matters. What he is, what he did, how he feels, what his choices are. What matters is, what is it like for you? to be in a situation where, and I'll be polite, you're sitting around and waiting for a man to decide whether he wants to be with you or not. Yes, seeing a sex worker is a very different thing than seeing someone, but 8 years? 8 years of your marriage? I mean, it's just bigamy. He has been married to two different people. So regardless of anything I could say about him or what he's done or who he is, I want to know why you would want to be engaged with this man and be sure he loves you. To me, love is behavior. Love is behavior. And this man is showing it's not words, it's not gifts, it's not, this is out of the doghouse. How is he treating you? Or is he worthy of your loving him? I think that is it's so easy for us to focus on the other person and say, well, if they do this, I'll feel better. And if they do that, I won't. But the truth is, you're going to feel bad no matter what, because this person's ruining 8 years. And I'll say one more thing. What I think about is if you have children, that's what I think about. How much of his emotional availability, distancing from you, you can't juggle all the balls at the same time and then say, oh, I'm a good father. So I'm just worried also about how have his children been affected by this? Because I have had lots of men say, oh, well, I've been a terrible husband, but I'm a great dad. It's like, well, if you haven't supported your spouse as a mother or a father, how can you say you've been a good dad when you've left them with anxiety and worry? And so I think that my concern is 100% for you. And my concern is that you're looking to this person to somehow find peace within yourself. And this is an impossible situation. You will never, ever find peace with this, though, especially with him talking. And don't believe he loves you, please. Who doesn't say, I love you, I love you? I bet he says that to her. I bet he tries to get every sex worker. Another desperately empty man who one is not enough, two is not enough, 100 is not enough. This is a very troubled guy. And I would be thinking about more, if you wanted to, how sick, how ill he must be to try to work all of these people like we don't matter, rather than how could he do this to me? I would say, wow, I can't, why would I be chasing someone who is so broken and hurts me over and over again? So this is kind of bass backwards in a way, Tammy. I'm looking to feel at peace by what this person says to me or isn't. You're going to have to find your peace no matter what this person does. And I understand when you've been in a relationship for a really long time, you're bonded, you're attached. You want them to come back. I don't think this person was ever with you in the first place. So very troubled person. And I feel for you. I really, really do. No one deserves this. No one deserves this. And Tammy, I didn't hear, I know you're going to say this. What is this? I assume it's a woman doing for herself. Is she a
Exactly.
therapist?
That's where exactly
Go
what's
ahead, you
going.
go.
Yeah, so I put the blog, should I stay or should I go? And I wrote a blog because we did a 4-part webinar series and they were all tied together and I was tired of giving out the individual links. So I put a blog together and I put that in linked in there. And you can journal. Kristen Snowden did a great job in a webinar in May, and she had 10 questions to ask to journal. Do I even like this person? Like, this is good information for you. I want to go to the how do I get over the unfairness and comparisons? Well, like, I'm sorry, WTF, oh, I love you more than her. But you had like you gave her gifts. You did like how does that
Right.
like there's no scale of like, well, he loves me a little bit. Like how much more is it? It doesn't matter. I'm gonna invite you, love yourself. Love yourself. The Empowered Women's Retreat, please, like love yourself. Choose you, choose that. This is insanity that he has this much control over you, and like, well, if I just dangle the carrot and I
Right.
tell her I love her a
Right.
little bit more, and
Still shut
oh,
up.
whatever, and I'm a love addict. BS, like, I'm
Right.
sorry, I
Love
got a little
addicts don't have
emotional about this.
affairs and then have sex with
No,
50 different sex workers.
yes, yeah, yeah,
That's not
and it
love.
just sounds nicer. I'm a love addict.
Right.
I love so much. No, like, there's so much brokenness. Yeah, a client for our residential treatment program, absolutely. We have 14, 21, and 28 days. He would not be a 14-day client. I mean, like, we can read that just in what you've shared. But Empowered Women's Retreat for you, please do that for you. That is about healing for you, regardless of what he does or doesn't do. And you say, how do we how do we keep the relation? Oh, wait, no. How do I get over this? You don't ever get over it. You get
No, you ain't
through
getting
it.
over it.
You get through it. It does not have to have this much power. It does not have to be this disruptive. And you just found out a couple months ago, you are very early in this process. So please give yourself the gift of, I need help and support for my healing. He's a train wreck, and he's, like, I don't see him course correcting to be on a nice track, for healing and recovery. I hear him really being manipulative for you.
And the question I think you have to ask yourself is, why aren't I keeping myself safe?
Yes.
Every
Yeah.
time I see or hear, or it reminds me of this. Every time I have to see them over the dinner table, it's torture. How are you taking care of yourself? By the way, Tammy, we do a lot of free groups. We haven't talked about it too much. We have, what,
Yeah.
15 of them a week. But is there a group for women, which is, should I stay or should I go? I know there's one for men.
Well, it's moving on alone, and that is for women who have been left, for women who have
Mm.
left, or women who are really seriously considering, but they're not really focusing on repairing the relationship. And I don't hear you being in that place yet. So I would lean into the other support. We have a betrayed partner work group starting in January. Very helpful, but I don't care. I'm gonna lean in. Empowered Women's Retreat. I've been there. It is so healing. Like, the focus comes off of all of that other stuff and back on healing you, processing anger, processing the hurt, the grief. Like, you make so much progress in a really short time. It's freaky to see how I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't witnessed it. It is amazing. And I would, like, choose you and your healing. You got no control over him. You can choose healing for you.
And this is grief,
Yeah.
because grief has different stages, and this is bargaining. Well,
Yeah.
maybe if you this and you say that, and maybe we'll this and that, and um, you've lost everything that mattered to you, and now it's been ground into the dirt. So I just hope you find a place to take care of yourself and take your focus off of him, because he obviously going to do whatever the F he wants. Who's going to take care of you?
Yeah.
Tammy, it is after the hour,
We're way after time. That
and
was a
we
little
need to have good
passionate
boundaries.
response and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
It's good to see you.
it was great to see you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing up. And
Yeah. Oh, well.
and for those of you that were here last week, really, truly, I'm incredibly grateful that you hung around and asked great questions, and keep coming back. I've got some guests the next couple of weeks, so check the schedule. But I've got some guests that will be
Yeah, and the holiday
participating.
schedule. Do you want to mention that to them so they know what
I
we're
don't
doing or
remember
not?
who's on which, but so
No, but
check
we're
out.
doing it or we're not.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
will we
Monday.
be?
No, I'll be here on Monday nights, but you can check out the schedule to see who's going to be with me. But yeah, we'll be here
Ooh,
on Monday night. So okay, but yeah, there
thank you
are
so
some
much.
changes on like the 27th. There isn't a webinar, and some of the drop-in groups are different. But check the schedule. We're working really hard to make sure it's accurate. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Dr.
See you
Rob.
soon, Tammy. Thank you.